Welcome, welcome. Sounds like we have an echo. So just reminding everyone to mute. Looks we have a lot of some unmuted folks that'll make the echo happen. So please mute. I'm so excited for today. Um, we have three amazing guests who woke up early in China to be with us tonight. So I'm just super thrilled and excited that you're here and that we can talk about this issue that is so, we live in it in the dark in the United States, and it's just really like China asking the question has evoked a lot of looking at it inside of our community, and a lot of new research that I was provoked to do by Mimi reaching out to me and asking me to go on Boston Roundface. And Boston Roundface, you're sideways. Yay, thank you. So, this is China is not our enemy community. We're happy to hold you from China in our hearts. I'm so excited that you're here with us. Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna start with Boston Ramp-Base and then go to Jing Jing and then to Mimi, because it all started with Mimi, who's been part of our community when she lived in New York, and then she went to live in Shanghai in China, and she's doing so much in the media. And so we'll finish with Mimi at, kind of moving from what does this question look like from where you sit? Because that's the question that Boston Roundface asked me. And you're still sideways. There you go. Thank you. Well, so let me start by introducing you to Boston Roundface. He's a Chinese video blogger and a media personality who's recognized for his commentary on global affairs. He operates primarily on platforms in China, has something like 5.5 million followers and many subscribers. So his integrity and his voice have made him, a go-to about global issues. So Mimi introduced me to him as a go-to in the United States to talk about poverty in the United States. And I'm going to let you describe what provoked that reach out and what's been happening in China around this kill line that you reached out to me for. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Am I muted?
No, you're on. You're good.
Okay. Thank you, Jody, for having me. It's a great honor to be here. So it all started from a online games like League of Legends. They have this term called kill line, or more often, execution threshold. It's a precise health threshold where some final ability can eliminate your opponent's character. So in 2025, a Chinese influencer claimed college students in Seattle turned this gaming term into a brutal metaphor for American daily life. He didn't just describe poverty or homelessness, he described how middle class Americans, after a single hospital visit, a car accident, or a layoff, a divorce, could plummet a hidden line and vanish into endless debt, homelessness, or death. And nobody heard from them ever since then. So it's interesting since no one in US ever called it kill line or execution threshold. No one has ever used such rhetoric, but it is obvious that its spread far exceeds that of similar concepts like Alice line, what we heard of, and has resonated with many American netizens on Reddit, on X, on Instagram. So according to this influencer, he saw a man bleeding on the street, waving off an ambulance because not because he's crazy, but because he knew the bill would be something like 4 or 5,000, and that's more than his rent. Many international students living in America, not only Chinese students, resonate with those lines saying they heard their classmate got lower limbs fractured on street, but waving off ambulance cut student health insurance doesn't cover that much and still gonna pay like 1,000, 2,000. So that moment is one man choosing death over debt became an anchor of cultural phenomenon. And that recalls back to 2025, early 2025, when TikTok ban in the US sent millions of American netizens finding Xiaohongshu an alternative. Their finding on China's platform shattered their assumptions. Beef noodles with egg for $2, not like 50.99. C-section for $200, no 20,000, and you can go there and just have your section done. It's the same day, right? And university tuition at $1,000 a year, not like 80 something thousand. And the government student loans are really intended to help you. There's no exorbitant interest rates such as like usurious loans that makes you pay back for decades, and 24/7 street food, safe subway rides at 2 a.m. We got Americans commenting like we were taught that China is like a prison, but women walking by themselves at 2 everywhere. So in Chicago, I'll be dead or raped, they commented. And China got high-speed rail networks covering the entire nation with like 40K kilometers, a track of connecting every corner of the country, rural or urban. Fares are just like 1/5 or 1/3 of US. And even most remote villages are guaranteed by the government have access to clean water, electricity, and internet, along with paved road, proper housing, and medical clinics. So the Kill line did not just expose America's fragility. We've been hearing about that since maybe W.B. Du Bois, like 100 years ago. But America's strong, got 800 military bases around the world ready to fight any kind of saucer man. Exposed American fragility and silence. Why no people's talking about those stuff, right? For decades, U.S. media have been selling the myth that you work hard, you get ahead. That's your American dream. And not only the U.S., the Asians, Japanese, Koreans, Indians, Chinese all believed it. Nobody even questioned and thought, are they really living that good? Everybody got like big house, 3 cars, turn on heater in winter 24/7, eat steak and egg every day, and only one job 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Happy life. Everybody happy. But in reality, now the Americans and Chinese know the society where you get sick, you lose a house. It doesn't make sense in China, but it makes perfect sense in America. And we got students living in America saying, normally he treat his classmate, American classmate, for buffet, and he treated him back with bubble teas, which is like I don't know in other places, but in Boston it's like 5.99 or 7.99, right? Where he got that money? He sold his plasma for money, so that makes our Chinese student think he's drinking blood. So it's cruel, but it's what's happening every day. So and for women who came to China after the Xiaohongshu reconciliation, they found it safe to walk on the street in 2 a.m. That's something they never thought about in the US, like walking by yourself 2 a.m., right? So the kill line is not a Chinese concept, it's a humane concept. And now many Americans are asking, why didn't we see this before? Because they were told to look away, just like how they redacted big pedophile names to so-called to protect victim privacy. And for those finally realized that safety that should be a basic human right, even in America. Good thing for them, they will not look away again, maybe this time. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I just want to say that what I experienced from you talking about this and how many people I saw looked at this, the conversation we did, I think the conversation is happening much more in China than the United States. So, unfortunately, in the United States, it still isn't talked about a lot. It's, shoved under the rug, just like the abuse of women. And it isn't, it's all abuse. It's all the abuse of the war economy, that we call capitalism, we call the war economy that war serves. And, you mentioned earlier about the 800 bases. Well, Code Pink's mission is to end war and bring the money home to the life-giving needs of our communities and the people. And so you're right to nail that the money's being spent a way to control others instead of to serve the lives of the people here. I just want to, I'm going to go to Jing Jing and then Mimi, and then we'll come back with some questions because after what you said, I've got some. But let's move to you, Jing Jing, and I just want to tell you all, Jing Jing, like talk about an amazing journalist. She's a Chinese journalist presenting the analysis of world news from a non-Western perspective, which is a blessing to the world. She's got a show, China Up Close, on CTGN, and she just started her own show, so you can watch her whenever you want on YouTube, and it's called The Jing Jing Show. But Jing Jing is brilliant and joyful. She's able to just bring information in a way that it makes your heart feel good. So, Jing Jing, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody, for this kind introduction. Hello, everybody. Really happy to meet all the Chinese not our anime community. I always love Cold Pink's work. Yeah, it's been very interesting. Like Boston Roundface told how this kill line became trendy in China, very accurate. But I think the kill line it was trending in China was because it's a wake-up call for Chinese. Wake up call, like wake up, they realize the American dream is so fake. Even Chinese in China have been brainwashed by this American dream, by the very powerful the US soft power from movies or from being painted the US as the beacon of democracy and freedom for decades. So many people in China believe that and still want to go to the US. But I think this kill line start to became a wake-up call because and now I think besides what Boston Runfist told us, there's another thing is Chinese people are talking about, oh, now I start to understand why the Hollywood movies storyline is so bizarre. For example, they are talking about the Spider-Man. Spider-Man, I watched Spider-Man. So how come Peter Parker's grandpa, who is already an old man, is still working so hard to provide for the family. And once he passed away, they almost lose their house. Why Batman or can do whatever he wants because he's so rich, or why Superman, Superman who saved the world, but his mother still lost his house. They don't. So it looks like the country doesn't care that you just saved the world. They're still gonna take your house away. And the pursuit of happiness, featured Will Smith. One of the most popular critical acclaimed movie in China. And now young people talking about, wait, I watched the movie for so long. Now it makes sense why this person is struggling to work hard. And he's also so dumb why he invested in this medical machines that clearly is a scam. And then he like trying to not lose his house. So Chinese people start to understand why the Hollywood movies are the way they are. Because Chinese people didn't understand. So that is the thing. There's a tremendous difference between China and the US. So as a journalist myself, I traveled to different parts of China, villages, mountains, remote areas to see how poverty alleviation project carried out, how people were lifted out of poverty. So in recent years, I see a lot of foreigners from different countries travel to China. And you know what? I'm always shocked at how foreigners are always shocked by very simple things in China. For example, very affordable fresh food in every supermarket, but not just in supermarkets, every community are guaranteed to have very affordable abundance of fresh food within 15 minutes circles. So it's required by the government. So you need to have this food market for every community within 5 minutes. You need to have everything, basic necessities. And also education, universities is very cheap. We cannot imagine you have to be in a huge barrier like this huge student loans to go to university. And medical insurance, of course, for example, I was talking to a US friend because I got injured. I went to the hospital and I got an MRI within 1 hour. And they told me what happened and only 400 kwai, only 400 Chinese yuan, and all covered by medical insurance. Basically, I didn't pay anything and I got it checked the day I go to hospital. And all my Western friends like was losing it. What are you talking about? There's no way you can get an MRI the same day you go in the hospital. So all these things we thought are very normal, very simple, everyday life, like clean streets, garbage always being taken care of. As a woman, I can walk alone during the midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., without worrying about a thing. That's very normal for us. We got used to it. And then until recently, there's a huge rush of international vloggers came here that we realized, oh, what we have is not normal in other countries. So this is like Chinese people start to realize what we have been taking a lot of things for granted. So this is it. Another thing is I really want to share is why China could lift all those people out of poverty. Maybe it will take a really long time, but I try to simplify it. So, of course, in the past few decades, the Chinese government always committed to the policies to lift people out of poverty. This has been consistent for like at least 4 decades. But poverty alleviation is not just give money to poor people. That will not help them. So I think from my observation, what makes it successful is first one I want to say is before 2020, we have very targeted policies. In Chinese, we call it 精准扶贫. It's very targeted policy to poverty alleviation. How targeted? For example, the people will go to villages to examine all those impoverished families to analyze what caused the poverty. Maybe for some families, it's the medical. For other families, because they lost the male. The male was injured, and they have 3 kids to raise. So they don't have the labor to bring income to the family. So each family is poor for different reasons. So they analyze it. And also they analyze each village's reason, what caused this village to be poor. And for example, in Yunnan, some villages are deep in the mountain. They have good abundance of agricultural products, but they don't have roads. They don't have roads to bring those products out. Also, business who are interested in purchasing those agricultural products cannot go in. They don't know this village exists. They don't know this village has the best tangerines in the world. So this villager, the staff will analyze all these reasons and write a report to the government. So we need to build roads, and they ask for budget to build roads. And also, this staff need to promote this village agro project to companies. We have the best tangerines if you want it. So they need to connect business with the villages. So that's why I saw the roads not only built in the village, but the road was connected to each household, to each door, to make sure the farmers can bring the products from their yard to their door, easy to sell. And also the staff will invite some experts in agriculture from Beijing, from top universities to help them. You need to plant these products more scientifically, so you will have more tangerines. And you can also plant other stuff. So these are many ways of examining the poverty too. So it's not just give you money and you figure out how to do it yourself. They are bringing the expertise, bring connections, bring infrastructure to each villages. So it's very targeted poverty alleviation. I went to some villages and really impoverished families. Those impoverished families who get subsidies from the government, they will be registered in the system. So, and they also have a plate on their house to see how much money they got from the government and where did money go. Maybe 2,000 to medical coverage, and the others go to support the kids' school education. So it's very clear where did money go. and they will be registered in the website, and the information will keep updated. So maybe after a few years of assistance, this family was lifted out of poverty because the injured person was healed, or maybe because the kids graduated from university and these kids can work and bring income to the family. So they no longer need subsidies, and then they will stop this assistance. So they will be monitored what happened to make sure the money was effectively invested to the families who really in need. So this is one of the reasons I think is really successful. But the other is, I mean, you mean the dedication of the government. So I think within several years, the Chinese government dispatched 3 million people to be village commissioners or to be village chief. These are all government workers, public servants, many of them from cities or university graduates. Over 3 million was dispatched to each corner of the country to lead a village, to help to guide this village out of their way of poverty. And many of them, if some of them even sacrificed their own lives. One famous one is a girl from Guangxi. She got a master's degree in a top university in Beijing. So after graduation, she could do anything, but she decided to go back to her village because she knows, like, I'm from village. I know what I got is because of the government. So I want to go to help my own village. But she was really working too hard. Even during a flood, she wanted to check some of the infrastructure, whether it's not to make sure it's not damaged by the flood. And then she died in an accident during the flood. Many things, such case happened in many villages. So it's because of the dedication. Even those who didn't lose their life. And my co-worker went to one of the poorest villages to be a village commissioner. And he basically shadowed this village commissioner to see what he did. This person spent 3 years of his life in this village to be basically the babysitter of the entire village. But he has his own family and kids. During the 3 years, he will not be able to see his own kids, his own wife. And after 3 years, maybe he will return to his family, but maybe he has to stay for a few more years to make sure those villagers will not return to poverty. So it was the tremendous dedication, the spirit of a lot of people to really help these villagers. And even now, even like we eradicated absolute poverty before 2020, but this poverty alleviation hasn't stopped. So there's a monitoring system that's still going on. Monitor those impoverished family. Anything happen? Because people could easily go back to poverty because of one accident, because of one injury, or because they have extra kid. So they are still being monitored for maybe extra 5 years to make sure they won't return to poverty. And then now more resources are still going to the village to boost the industries of the village to make sure they can live on their own feet. But speaking of living on their own feet, one of the sayings during poverty alleviation, in Chinese we say, 扶贫先扶志. If you want to alleviate poverty, you need to alleviate, so how to translate? You need to help them to have 智. How to translate 智? 智 can translate into two things. One is intelligence, means you need to give them more education to make sure they have the knowledge to get out of poverty. Second, 智 is like ambition, can be translated into ambition. You need to motivate them. Like you need to motivate them to work, to maybe have better education, to make sure they want their kids to go to school, to make sure they want to have their own businesses, to make sure they want to stand on their own feet. So it's never about just giving people money. It's about giving people the power, the tool, the knowledge to live on themselves, to change the fate of their next generations. So this is the thing. I was very shocked. Even as a Chinese born and raised in China, when I was a kid, I often tell my friends I was a malnourished kid. And because my parents didn't know and couldn't find enough protein to feed me, so like my bones were very soft as a baby. They were struggling to find proteins. But now I'm overnourished because I've been eating meat and protein every day. There's abundance of food. Not only because I love protein, it's also so cheap and affordable. So, and this is my story. Now there's a massive nutrition increase across China. Kids are much taller now. My mother, to this day still regret. Oh, regret so much. I didn't give you enough protein, so you're short. I wish you could grow taller, but it's too late to do that now. But
I don't
now
want
all
you
the
to be any more than you are, Jing Jing, because you are so and I just want
thank
to
you.
like you're making everyone smarter about the difference. So what we hear from Boston Roundface is the mirror back at us, and then what you're telling us is even from when you were little. So, you're talking about moving the last 100 million, but you're part of the first 900 million that got moved out of poverty that did include better education, so that already worked. So they knew it would work, the next step around for the stuff that's really hard to get to. So thanks for making us smarter about the possibility of moving everyone out of poverty that the United States intentionally keeps in poverty. So the war economy needs people in poverty to control the rest of the people. And that's the difference, I think, between the war economy and the peace economy. I call capitalism the war economy and socialism the peace economy. So that's a really good way for us to witness it very starkly. Next, I want to bring in your voice, Mimi, uh, because so we can come back to some questions. But Mimi has been part of our China's Not Our Enemy community. She lived in New York City, came to one of the conferences that we did at the People's Forum, and just kept walking and found herself living in Shanghai and working at Wave Media and Tricontinental. And she's a Chinese Australian writer, journalist, and storyteller. And she is really interested in telling in socialist storytelling, especially about China. So you're looking at this, Mimi, from the space of someone who's just arrived. So you've got a foot in both places. So how do you witness this conversation right now?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Jody, for that introduction. And thank you, Boston Roundface and Li Jingjing, my good friends. It's an honor to be in the same panel as you guys. So I think everything that has been said today by Boston Roundface and Li Jingjing so far is a perfect lead up to kind of the stories that I want to tell today. So I, as Jody said, lived in New York City for 8 years, which is a very significant amount of time. And I actually had that exact experience of being a Chinese Australian person who was like brainwashed into believing that the US was the peak and the hub of democracy and the American dream was this shiny, unattainable thing. But I actually went there myself and I just saw the reality of the situation. I lived in New York City, which is one of the most expensive and one of the wealthiest cities in America. And yet I saw poverty surrounding me all the time. I would go to the People's Forum a lot, which is located in Manhattan. And when you go to Manhattan, it's extremely jarring, right? You see these insane Wall Street buildings, or you see these insane Wall Street bankers and men in suits and these extremely wealthy people. And on the same block, you see people suffering from drug addiction, people without clothing, people without food, just like no basic human rights, basic human dignity has been robbed off of them, right? So that is what I was confronted with in New York City. And so the American dream shattered in my mind, and I was completely awakened to the truth of the world. And I think right now, especially as Jody mentioned with the war economy, we see that America is deteriorating before our eyes. So people, including in China, cannot help but see the reality of the situation. People in China are shocked, guys. Like, I have coworkers, I have friends who say to me things like, wait, but why did you leave New York? Like, it's such a great city. And I'm like, let me tell you something. You know, I have to tell you about the subway system, the public infrastructure. I didn't have healthcare for 8 years because I was too scared to be stuck with a $10,000 bill for one test. You know what I mean? So I have seen the situation on the ground in America. And of course, also as a non-American, it was just getting unsustainable for me to stay there. But I then started looking towards China, and I did go to that conference, like you said, Jody, which was life-changing. And I started to look for real socialist alternatives. And something that frustrates me the most is when people in the West start to poke holes when we talk about China, right? They say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this human rights violation? Well, what about that? And I think, number one, of course, that is propagated by that very big budget of anti-China propaganda. And two, the Western hypocrisy is what frustrates me the most because people are so obsessed with critiquing a place in the global south, a developing place in the global south that they have never been to before. Also, not knowing the history, the century of humiliation, you know, the attempts of colonization, the encirclement that has been happening over the past 100 years, more than 100 years. And they have the nerve to critique from a burning house. So, anyway, I wanted to get that little spiel out the way, but I wanted to talk about what I have seen in China. So, like Li Jingjing said, and I love that the explanations of how poverty alleviation has been achieved and is continuously being achieved. I have made a bit of a presentation about poverty alleviation, specifically rural revitalization in China. So, can everybody see my screen? Yes? Awesome. So like Jingjing said, rural revitalization is a huge part of poverty alleviation, and it's actually the next step of poverty alleviation in China. And my theme of this presentation, and I really want everyone to pay attention to this core message, is that no place in China gets left behind. Like when I even moved to China, I couldn't imagine the scale of China. China is so big, and 1.4 billion people, that's a lot of people. But what is the most moving in the process of poverty alleviation and rural revitalization is that I see that every single person is considered a human being. And I've never felt more human than I do as I've lived in China. And I want to use the case study of Guizhou, which is China's previously poorest province, as an example for this because I've been there 6 times in the year that I've lived here. I've got to meet the people, I've got to speak with local people and local officials, and I've got to see for myself without even any outside noise what rural revitalization and poverty alleviation can really look like. So rural revitalization comes after China alleviated extreme poverty in 2020, and it comes in 5 phases. It comes in industrial revitalization, talent revitalization, cultural revitalization, ecological revitalization, and organizational revitalization. So I understood all these 5 different phases because I got to talk to the people, I got to see the talents. So the talents as in cultivating specific skills, like Jingjing said, giving people the motivation to have the autonomy to create industries, to be thriving within these industries. Cultural revitalization. So Guizhou, for example, has a lot of ethnic minority groups, such as the Miao, Dong, Shui ethnic groups. These ethnic groups have very rich cultures, and something that bothers me again about Western hegemony, again, the hypocrisy of that, is saying that there's some idea of Han supremacy or Han hegemony in China. It couldn't be further from the truth. As you can see in my photos, these people are all of ethnic minority groups. They are playing their instruments, they are wearing their garments, they are celebrating with song and dance. That is not only continuing, but actually being encouraged with cultural revitalization is becoming more and more popular, especially online, to appreciate and engage in these cultural activities and cultural crafts. And so rural revitalization is a way for the villagers in these rural areas to have better lives and to make rural areas better to live, work, and stay in. So, of course, education is of utmost importance in China, but a lot of people go outside of these rural areas to go get educated. And I think a way for them to be encouraged to come back is to also make sure that their hometowns are also being revitalized, not left behind or forgotten. So the reason why Guizhou is one of the most has historically been difficult to be developed is because it's very mountainous. So there's a saying that says, "No 3 feet of flat land, no 3 days of clear sky." So obviously the terrain is very unpredictable in Guizhou. It's extremely mountainous, and so it's very difficult to even envision that there can be winding roads or high-speed rails or green energy centers. So it's 92.5% mountains and hills, which is a very overwhelming statistic. And because of this reason, it used to be very disconnected from other parts of China. It was very difficult to access. It would take such a long time to go from point A to point B. You know, high-speed rail infrastructure is so difficult to imagine, but let me tell you, it's been done. And I just wanted to draw the comparison with America. I actually, because I was trying to obtain my visa in America for about 5 years, it took a very long process, and I couldn't leave the US for 4 years of that time. During that time, you know, I was itching to get out of New York City, and so I decided to also embark and go and see other states in the US. And I saw how difficult it was to get to these places without planes. I saw how the infrastructure was completely crumbling, and I saw how rural areas, especially those populated by Mexican immigrants or Black Americans, were completely or Native Americans as well, were completely neglected. Like there was no infrastructure there. If you go to these desert areas, these mountainous areas, you couldn't find infrastructure for like miles and miles and miles and miles away. And that's not to preserve the nature or anything. And I think it's like Jody said, it's deliberately to neglect these marginalized communities of color. So when you compare it to Guizhou, Guizhou now has an Guizhou now has extremely impressive infrastructure. I got to visit the highest bridge in the world, which is in Huajiang. So Huajiang is a river, and it used to take people a day to go from one side of the river to the other. You know, it takes hours and hours and hours just to sell, like Jingjing said, the agricultural products that are the best, freshest fruits, but it would take so long to be able to deliver it. So now it cuts down that travel time to minutes, to 5 minutes. And I stayed in the village that is the closest to this bridge. They would tell me how much more convenient and easy it was because of this bridge. You know, these people who are working class, first-hand villagers who are just growing their produce and living with their families and taking their kids to school, now the commute to school is like 100 times faster, and you cannot imagine the impact that that has on everyday people's lives. Also, if you go by high-speed rail to Guizhou, you will see that not only are there stops in like most different cities and most different towns, but there's high-speed rail infrastructure everywhere. So Guizhou is connected not only with other provinces, but also with each other. So you can go from Rongjiang to Taijiang in an hour or two to go to a festival. So I went to a festival celebrating the Miao women, and it took me 1 hour to get from one place to another within Guizhou. It's so easy, and it allows people within the province to connect to each other and to connect with their cultural roots as well. There's green energy centers because Guizhou has beautiful natural surroundings. There's abundance of wind and solar power. And so there's plenty of green energy centers that have been built as well. So one of the initiatives that really amped up rural revitalization in Guizhou is the Village Super League. And I'm sure maybe you guys have heard of this before, but it is one of the most talked about and most incredible initiatives I've ever seen. It's a grassroots event organized by local governments and people's committees, started in 2021, and it's become a crazy success all over China, but also around the world. It's basically like a soccer match or a football match that different village leagues take part in. So these leagues can have plumbers, they can have farmers, they can have teachers, people of all different kinds of jobs uniting in their villages and friendly competing against each other. And these matches are the most vibrant, amazing events, and they happen every single weekend. So if you go to Guizhou, that's something you just have to do to see the energy of the local people and to see all the opportunities that have been birthed from this incredible event. You know, foreign celebrities and foreign famous football players also come to visit. People from Africa, people from Brazil, people from all over the world see this spectacle. Because it's not just a soccer game, it's also a celebration of the local ethnic culture. The whole thing is like a carnival, it's a festival. There's parades, there's songs, there's dance, there's fireworks. It's incredible. And because of this, it's actually really ignited the local economy of Rongjiang. It sparks so many job opportunities. You know, it's creating so many ways for people to come home to Rongjiang, to be able to help out the local Rongjiang economy, to engage in the dance troops or the choirs. It's made a lot of people come home. So I want to show some videos of this event. This is the soccer field. This is the party. It's very fun. It's very, very fun. This is the parade. They dressed me up in the traditional Miao attire, which is very sweet. But I want to bring it to the disastrous flood that happened last year. So there was a really horrible, horrible flood that happened in Rongjiang. You can see it's on the actual soccer stadium, which, like I said, is the heart and soul now of Rongjiang. It's where all the local opportunities start to arise. Local vendors can vend there for free, but it had to come to a halt when Rongjiang faced its most terrible flood in decades. The floods went as high as second stories of every building. They completely submerged people's businesses, and it completely put the town underwater, which was so scary and horrible. And I was keeping in touch with my friends, the village leaders, who were telling me the situation on the ground. But throughout China, military personnel and volunteers would come and they would help out the local people of Rongjiang, and there would be communal food spaces. There was recovery within days. I'm going to show you some videos next of that process, but it was amazing to see how quickly Rongjiang recovered from this crisis. You know, we've seen these kinds of crises happening in the US, and what happens? People are neglected, people are still missing, people are lost. It's an absolute tragedy. But in China, like I said, every single human being is treated with utmost respect and dignity. And so there was extreme efforts to make sure that people came out safe and alive. I think the death toll of this flood, which is still very sad, was 6 people. And I know that people worked as hard as possible to make sure that the death toll stayed as low as possible. I have a friend who was here who her shop was completely submerged in water, and the whole local town, they came together. She had to buy the materials, but the whole town came together and renovated her shop within 4 days. It was completely brand new, and actually it looked better than before, and it was amazing. So I have a quick video I'll show you guys.
中国人团结死掉，再一次聚响了。村民们拿着菜刀聚集到村委会，这场面不是暴力血腥，而是洪水中的温情。历史性的洪水让孙超赛事举办地榕江不得不紧急按下暂停键。洪水虽然已退去，另一场不分昼夜、更具挑战性的比赛迅速开启。解放军及武警官兵和广大榕江民众志愿者们一起拿着铁锹、扫帚，奋战在青鱼一线。 一铲一铲地修补灾难的裂痕，抽水机不停人也不停，从早上8点干到晚上8点。军民战士只有在不出原料的间隙，躺在草地休息片刻，看着让人心痛。与此同时的另外一边，村民自发地来到村委帮忙，洗菜的洗菜，做饭的做饭，灶上的炉火同样也是从早上到晚上不停歇。村民从10里8乡的地方一手扛一手提的送来物资，心怕我们奋斗在一线可爱的军民饿着。 厨师累得直不起腰，双手抽筋。他们手里握着的跟青鱼的铁锹一样沉甸甸的。 这又何尝不是一场村超精神在抗洪战场的磅礴续写呢？一份份热乎乎的盒饭。
I'll pause it there, but as you can see, this is a peace economy. This is what a peace economy looks like. You know, people are cooking for each other, they're keeping each other warm, they're making sure they have shelter, they're giving each other housing. Like, and you know, the PLA is doing that, but the villagers are doing that as well. So, this is how you get out of a crisis together. You know, even in a province that used to be the poorest province, people will come together with the resources that they have, and across China people will also connect those resources. So I wanted to end my presentation by showing some of the pictures of the wonderful women that I know in Rongjiang and in Guizhou. They are all of different ethnic minority groups. They're singers, they're embroiderers, they're farmers. And it's an honor to get to know them. Most of them have stories where they left Guizhou for a while, but because of the rural revitalization, they have come home and they are enhancing and uplifting their homes as well because of rural revitalization. So, yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, let's
Thank
work
you.
towards a peace economy.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for making it so bringing us with you. So now I want to bring up Megan, who we're all here because of Megan. She brought everyone here, and she takes care of this community so well. Megan, if you want to ask the first questions.
Yes, thank you so much for these amazing presentations. I just love to hear all of you speak on this. I have so many questions. I mean, I think it's incredible, you know, knowing that 900 million people have been lifted out of poverty in China. And I think that people don't really, like, you can say that number, but it's impossible to really comprehend the scale of that. Um, and, you know, so many international, you know, institutions have called it the greatest poverty alleviation achievement in history. But like at the same time, the average, you know, US citizen will never hear about this. They'll never learn about this. And that feels so intentional to me. Um, because like this is something we should be celebrating, right? Why are we not celebrating this? Why are we not there learning and taking this information back and, you know, using it in our own communities? So I'm just wondering if you can speak to, you know, why you think nobody in the US knows about this.
Yeah, great question, because I think, you know, Boston Roundface was bringing the story of US poverty to his community, but that it's not happening the other way around. Um, any of you want to speak to it? And Boston
I
Roundface,
guess the
you're like, you use Boston because you lived in Boston for a while, right?
yeah, I lived in 10 years.
Okay. So you have a sense of, you know, both. Does it bother you that, you know, here's all this poverty nobody talks about in America, but there's no conversation about this amazing success that is being
I
avoided?
think there's a very obvious hierarchy of information transmitting in globally. 95% of the news happening in Africa don't get transmitted to other countries. They only stay in Africa. There are a lot of Americans, they have all kinds of advanced media. They think Africa is a country. They think China is a only country in Asia. That Israel is not Asia. So it's very, how do you say that? Material advancement does not necessarily mean your mind um is free. So I think that's the first thing. The hierarchy of information transmitting need to be break. So the Western media monopoly on information can be set free. People can know about the world and know what's happening on the other side of the planet. That's the first. And the second is because people's attention to different headline is basically different, because if we look at WAPO, we look at NYT, every day people got big headlines like pedophiles and Epstein files, comparing to maybe 900 million people in Chinese human emancipation and poverty. Of course, people care more about what related to them they think culturally and socially to them most. And all those killings, crimes, shooting every day, mass shooting in Canada yesterday make people they feel it's tragedy and they feel sad they want to pay attention to. So psychologically, only those news makes you sad, makes you angry, and makes you happy. So people pay more attention to it, not because it's more glorious or make you feel good. It's about happiness, even it's fake, and it's about anger, even it's fake. So we enter a new stage where deepfake and AI generated fake news are surrounding people every day. That with help of many tech not tech rich people like Tech Rise Musk or his sponsors like what's this called, Peter Thiel, right? So
Yeah.
these guys don't care about maybe people living on the planet because they dream of dying on Mars maybe 100 years ago by his supporters and his millions of sons. So think about that. That's a big challenge to U.S. and so-called developed countries, not only U.S. but also in UK, in Japan. People no longer figure out and no longer willing to check if the information they're absorbing is true or not true. So it's different in China because we still care, but there's still a trending because the erosion of short video is like 30 something seconds that you need to catch your audience eyeballs in 3 seconds. Otherwise, people just turn away, right? You just slip and you're gone. So that's a big challenge. And the third is people are
Yeah.
not familiar with the foreign countries, even they're in the US.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. People are not paying attention to other countries because they think they're superior, and there's still inertia of American exceptionalism that the new generation, the Z generation, still needs time to relearn, rediscover the cultural tragedy that been discovered like 10 something decades ago by American scholars. So just like W.B. Du Bois, how his discoveries and Martin Luther King being called again and again in BLMs and in this time the killing of American citizen Rennergood, right? Rennergood. So that's a rediscovery of whatever been discovered. Not necessarily mean okay, you're American. You know what have been discovered 100 years ago. So it still takes time. And together with the other challenges, the hierarchy of information transmitting, and all kinds of big headlines just haunting you every day. Look here, look here. You don't look what's important. You just look what they want you to look, right? So that's what I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. That was a great takedown of the media, the corrupt media that we live inside of. And also, just to add to that, and why this community exists, is China's not our enemy, is it's also meant to make you hate, and meant to make you crazy, and meant to make you uncomfortable and distract you from the human heart that you have. It really goes in and tries to be destructive. So thank you. Excellent. Jingjing or Mimi, did you want to share anything?
Sure. Of course, the US ruling elites doesn't want all Americans to see what's happening in China because by showing what's happening in China, they have to tell Americans that socialism works. I mean, so if they let them see that, they will see working class farmers living in China who are earning much less income than average Americans, but still own a house, have access to fresh food, no student loans, no need to go bankrupt because of healthcare. So if they let all Americans see what's happening in China, they it's breaking all the lies they have been telling their citizens for decades. Socialism works here because to the US ruling elites, what do you mean you have to uplift farmers and the working class? Just exploit them, let them die on the streets, right? Give them drugs, give them a temporary relief from the harsh realities, and just die. But here in China, leave no one behind. A country, whether a country is well developed, is not defined by how many oligarchs, how many billionaires you have. It's defined by whether the least privileged people have a dignified life. And that is happening in China. And I would say in China, most policies are not designed for the wealthy people. Well, in China, there's no upper limits of how wonderful, how successful, how wealthy your life can be. If you talented, you work harder, you have access, you can be very successful, very rich, sure. But there's a lower limits for everyone's life. Like to guarantee, government policies are guaranteed everyone will not go homeless. You will always have access to food, to electricity, to water, to heating. So all these basic necessities in China are very, very cheap, very, very affordable because these things are, all these policies are designed for the less privileged people. So you may hear some really wealthy Chinese complain about some government policies. They can do this, they can do that. It often means the policies doesn't allow them to dictate policies or do whatever they want. But those policies are crucial to guarantee the less privileged, the less wealthy people in China have a dignified life. So of course, why would the U.S. ruling elites want us to see this? That's against their own interests, right?
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. Yes, dignified life. I'm so grateful for you bringing that up, Jing Jing. It's not something that anyone is really, because even the billionaires, they're not living a dignified life. You know, like look at their lives. So it's really, you know, as I said on Boston Roundface's show, it's just like it's a country where everyone lives in poverty, even the billionaires, and that's a very impoverished life. That when you these stories that are revealed with Epstein, that is not a good life. That's an impoverished life. That is someone who is not human, searching for something out of their emptiness. So, Mimi, did you want to say anything to that question?
I think Boston Roundface and Jing Jing hit the nail on the head. Honestly, it's a very deliberate and intentional way of omitting people from the truth of not only China, but also how poverty can be alleviated and should be alleviated. Because the US is deliberately doing this to its people, you know, in order to maintain control, in order to manipulate, in order to hide people from the truth of how that country really runs, which is being exposed more and more every day. So, yeah.
Thank you. Megan, do we have any more questions from the group here? I think you were harvesting some from the chat.
Yes, we got a few audience questions in the chat. Um, there's one that asks, what compels the Chinese government to relieve poverty, or is it just done because it's what intelligent, moral societies do?
What do one of you want to answer that? I think the question answered itself. Maybe another one.
Okay, let's see. Dana asked, besides targeted poverty alleviation for rural areas, is there a universal system of social safety nets in big, bustling, competitive cities?
Did one of you want to take that on?
Uh, do you mean whether they provide the same thing for education? I'm not sure whether I
No,
get
so we just heard from you, both you and Mimi, about how there's the safety net and how people are cared for. And I think he's asking, but does the same thing happen in big bustling cities, or do you have to live in an impoverished region to get taken care of?
in big bustling cities, normally there's well less chance to have very impoverished families, right? So mostly we go to the rural regions. Yeah. So and
But that's hard. So Jingjing, that's hard for us to understand because in big bustling cities in the United States, there are homeless people living in the streets that you pass every day. So when you say that, you're saying something that we're not going to assume, because there's a lot of poverty in big bustling
Mm.
cities. So I think that's why the question is that where
Um,
there is also a lot of poverty is in big bustling cities. And,
Mm.
does no one fall through the safety net in Shanghai or Beijing?
I'll say
Uh,
something.
uh,
Sorry,
oh,
Jingjing.
yeah.
Well, let Jijing
Yeah,
and
I
then we'll
can.
go to Mimi.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can say
Jingjing, you
about
go
some
ahead.
like policies, and you can add on. Yeah. So just from what I see is why there's no poor people in the city is I think one Chinese policy is very smart to prevent have homeless people or slums in the city. So we have in Chinese we call it 户口,户口is a residence thing. So for example, so if you are with a village residence, you're in a village and you have a city residence, you're in the city. So the village people can come to the city to work, to have a job, but what if they got fired, if they got unemployed, they always have a house, a home back in their villages. So during the economic recessions decades ago, there were a lot of people, workers were unemployed. So where did the unemployed people go? Go back to their villages because back in the village, they have a house. Like not everyone in the city has a house because most of people rent their places. But the villagers, migrant workers, who you think are doing maybe not a preferred job in the city, doing construction, but most of them have a huge house in the village and has a piece of land for agriculture. And because of they have the residence in the village, they are guaranteed to have the land for house and the land for agriculture. And those land are forbidden to be sold. That's the government's policy to protect their properties. So agricultural land and the land for building villagers' houses are forbidden to be sold. So if some successful big rich oligarchs come to the village, I want to purchase your land, and maybe your family is in a crisis, in the bankruptcy. How about you sell your land to us? We build a factory and we give you a bunch of money. That is forbidden because there's a loophole. Some rich people can go to doing some scams, and just purchasing a bunch of land. And then in the end, the farmers will lose the money, lose the land. They have no place to stay. So the government policies providing the people, villagers who have resident permit, you always have a land for house and agriculture. So when they lose their job in the city, they can go back home and plant their own vegetables. They don't need to buy vegetables, just plant their own vegetables. So they always have food to eat. So this is the thing, preventing creating poverty, homeless people in the city. Yeah, that's one of the policy. I think it's very smart. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mimi, maybe you can add on.
Well, I was just gonna talk about some of the things I've seen. There are community centers everywhere, so obviously it is true that these cities, these urban areas are a bit more competitive and they're a lot busier, but there are so many different types of infrastructure and facilities to balance that out, to make sure that people are getting the services and the assistance that they need. So there's so many community centers everywhere. These community centers have community canteens where you can get food for super, super cheap. Literally like a whole huge meal of like 4 or 5 dishes for like $3. You can take them home so elderly people don't have to cook. There are so many different facilities that ensure that people can afford a way of life in these big cities without bankrupting them, without them becoming poor because of they live in a big city. The healthcare is extremely, extremely affordable as well. Food, groceries as well. So, of course, there are different kinds of like higher end groceries, but in general, groceries have to be maintained at a low, low price so people of all wages can afford them. So I just wanted to talk about the kind of the material facilities that I see because I know in New York City when I lived there, the groceries were just all over the place, extremely expensive, unaffordable. You go to a deli and the groceries are unaffordable. Healthcare, you can forget about it. Rent prices are ridiculous. So I think that is also something that I've noticed in big cities that are super different to the big cities that experience poverty in America.
Wow, thank you. And which reminds me, Look, we have three amazing journalists. They work every day to tell stories and they're confronting the propaganda. I think they're global peace activist heroes because they all do very serious research. You can see they're deeply researched, very brilliant, and great storytellers. They bring you into the moment. So I just want to make sure all of you are posting the how can everyone here follow you? Because Mimi does awesome things where she takes you into community centers or the library. I mean, like if how we're kind of all made dumb by the propaganda that gets funded by our tax dollars. And all three of them will bring you in and make you smarter and also give you joy. So if you three could please put in the chat how folks could follow you. I know you have a bunch of new fans. And Megan, is there another question before we probably should let everybody go? They've got to go into their days and just, thank you for waking up early and joining us. The time difference between the two countries is vast. 13 hours to 16 hours, right? It's good that we can be connected, and I hope we can have more of these conversations. What we know is peace is about dialogue and converting, having conversations, learning about each other. I hope we can have more of these. And back to you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's such a pleasure to hear from all of you, and thank you for waking up so early to meet with our China's Not Our Enemy community and educate all of us. And for all of our audience, make sure you follow our speakers. I'll send follow-up email with all of their information as well, so you can continue to follow what they're doing and to continue learning from them. But yeah, just once again, thanks everybody, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Yay, deep gratitude. Love you. China's not our enemy.